Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Greetings, Homo sapiens sapiens, and welcome to the next stage in your technological evolution. Climb out of your caves, drop those crude stone axes, and join us for another instalment of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. And here, draped in a crudely fashioned synthetic animal skin, and with a virtual bone through his septum, it's Matthew Dickerson himself. Come and join us by this AI-generated fire pit, Matt, and tell us all about your busy week that you just had.
Well, I will tell you about that, but just a quick one there when you mentioned Homo sapiens sapien. I do remember at school, we had a school project and the teacher said, we just want you to go out and do a project on the reproductive system of an animal. And I went, okay, what animal will I choose? And I thought, I'd love to do it on humans, but that's a bit, hold on. I'll go and just say I'm doing it on Homo sapiens sapien because that's still an animal. We're animals, so what the heck?
Yep.
I don't know the teacher was overly impressed with the student who brought in the project on the reproductive system of the Homo sapiens sapien. But true to the word, she said it was an animal, so I'll let you get away with it.
You found your loophole and you dove into it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it has been a busy week. I've been out riding my bicycle. We did about 740 kilometres over the last 6 days, charity fundraiser. But one of the things that I thought was significant was we had a gentleman on the ride who rode an e-bike. Now, e-bikes aren't brand new and they've been around for some time and lots of people ride them.
But they're really taking off now.
They're taking off and they're getting better all the time. But what I loved about this gentleman was 78. In fact, he had his 78th birthday on the ride. And I just thought the idea that a 78-year-old person could come along, ride some big kilometres. Some days we're riding 160 kilometres in a day.
Yeah,
so they're big
massive
days. He couldn't quite get through it with one battery, so he'd bought a second battery for the ride so he could swap over at one of our rest stops. But I just love the idea that you're riding along. He's still working a bit, not as much as the rest of the people on the peloton, but he's still working a bit, doing his bit there, but just participating. And I talked to him a little bit about it, and he's been riding it for a couple of years now. He's been trying some different things and different bikes and all the rest of it. But just the fact that we're getting that e-bike technology to such an advanced state where you just ride along beside someone, you couldn't even notice unless you had a particular look at the down tube where you went, it's a pretty big solid down tube there, which is where the battery sits.
Yeah.
And you also looked at him not really sweating and puffing and panting like the rest of us. That was a bit of a giveaway as well.
Next year.
But I do
I've got a couple of friends with e-bikes and they do big rides like that, between country centres and stuff and, 4 or 5 day rides and whatnot. Yeah, and it enables them to get around it.
And it does mean that there's some extra potential for tourism. So we do see e-bike tourism. In fact, I've done it overseas when we've turned up to a particular city. If we want to get around the city and have a look at the city, you walk, it takes you a fair while to get to places. If you get on a bike, people get a bit hot and sweaty. You get on an e-bike, you can look at the city in a timely fashion.
Cruise around.
Without getting too hot and sweaty, but also not missing things. Cause
you see so much more when you're walking, but as you say, there's a lot more energy in the walking of those long distances. But on an e-bike, you can just cruise around and pick up stuff.
Yeah, so I really do I haven't got one. I don't ride an e-bike. I'm still trying to stave off for as long as possible riding a real bike. I'm sure I'll get one at some stage.
It's imminent. It'll happen.
It is indeed.
Okay, folks, I hope you have your plates ready because the all-you-can-eat buffet is serving now. Today we're looking to repurpose some carbon dioxide and solve some of the energy woes in sunny Sardinia. And speaking of repurposing, Vegemite is about to get a zhuzhing as a superfood with a broader purpose than just your standard brekkie toast. And everything old is new again as container ships turn back the clock, harnessing wind power once more. But let's get rolling with our first story. Try this on for size, folks. The onset of self-driving cars is surely coming, like it or not. And that is likely to require some adjustments in the way things are done on our roadways. San Francisco is rolling already with driverless taxis, as well as various cities throughout China, as I gather. So it stands to reason that urban planners start to consider implications of having large-scale autonomous car fleets in our cities. Matt, what are your thoughts, and how are things like traffic lights, for example, going to change?
Funny you should mention traffic lights. I thought we might explore a bit more about traffic lights and how they might change with autonomous vehicles. Now, let's go back a little bit with traffic lights. Way back in 1868, the first gas-lit signal appeared in London in 1868. Now,
hang on a second. Traffic lights, what, for horse-drawn carriages?
I can only assume that it was because there weren't too many cars around.
And I'm just guessing, like in those days, you just rode your horse or your carriage wherever there was a bit of space.
And it must have been a busy intersection, and they put up
So whereabouts was it?
in London in 1868.
Yeah, right.
Yep. And so it was a bit like a railway signal. It was manually operated, as you can imagine, but it wasn't great. It actually leaked some gas and there was an explosion. And the policeman that operated the signal was severely injured, so they went, let's just give up on that.
Do something different.
Next one around, we had an electric traffic light installed in Cleveland, Ohio in 1914. So you can get that. You can go, well, some cars were starting to get around and maybe we need to control some intersections then. Not a lot of cars, but you've probably got still horses, horse-drawn carriages, cars, maybe some bicycles around. So they just had some control. Now, red and green were the only lights on that particular traffic light.
Right. But I'm imagining that, they would have had policemen standing in the middle of intersections around about that time.
With white gloves and whistles, I assume. Yeah, that's right. Now, so that was interesting. The introduction of the three-colour system came a bit later, but the big breakthrough, in my opinion, around all of this was at an international convention in 1931. Everyone agreed we should have three colours. They should be red, green, and orange-yellow.
Amber.
Amber. That's right.
But, that makes sense, doesn't it? That, you want people to be able to drive in. Well, how many times have we gotten together as a globe, as a planet, and agreed on something?
Not often enough. And I wish at that conference they would have said, hey, let's decide on left-hand drive or right-hand drive.
They had their opportunity.
That was it. In 1931, there weren't enough cars around the world then that surely they could have changed. But no, now changing would just cause so many deaths. 1931, I thought that was fantastic. As you said, how many times do we get international agreement with something as significant as that? But it means we can go anywhere in the world and we get to these things and we say, I know what that means. It's green. I know what that means. It's in the same spot. I know what that means. So that's fantastic. You see some minor modifications with some arrows on them, or the pedestrians. I like the ones that have the countdown for the pedestrian time, so you know how many seconds you've got left to run across the road. So all that's fantastic. But some researchers have said we need a fourth colour. And now, what a concept after almost a century of the three-colour system.
Purple light.
A purple light. Well, they're calling it white light at the moment.
Oh, right. It's going to be white. Right.
No, it's not going to be white. They're just calling it white light. White is the working colour. It may be purple. It would need to be a fairly strong primary colour, you would think. But I'm not convinced that
So you're saying it's got to be blue, but blue's probably a dodgy colour.
Blue's maybe a bit close to green, and if you're red-green colourblind, does that?
No, I think it's got nothing to do with red-green colour. But I just think blue sometimes doesn't stand out enough.
Yeah, right.
But
it might be a bit close to green, I thought. If it was a bit sunshiny, a bit dark, they're both kind of darkish colours. But the concept here is that with autonomous vehicles on the road, when you've got the fourth colour traffic light, let's call it white. It's on white. That's the signal to autonomous vehicles to go through. Now, they're talking to each other and talking to the traffic lights, but it's a signal to us good old-fashioned humans to follow the car in front of us. This sounds like a disaster to me.
It could be problematic, but people are going to start tagging those autonomous cars and going, I'm going to follow this guy through the traffic.
Exactly right. Now, some of the initial computer modelling, remembering there's no intersection like this in the world at the moment, says that you could reduce congestion by about 40%. Now, that was without taking into account pedestrians. When you throw them into the mix in terms of having pedestrian buttons as well, about 25% reduction in delays if you've got this fourth colour. And I suppose the problem I have here is that if I'm looking at autonomous vehicles being able to be used on the road, I want them to work with what you and I have got to work with. If we've got to build traffic lights differently or change traffic lights to accommodate autonomous vehicles, then maybe they're not good enough. Maybe we need to get them so that they can work with what we've got. Now, I think the idea here is that because autonomous vehicles will be speaking with each other and the traffic lights by having the white colour, then it means that they can just do what they need to do and get through an intersection, rather than when you're sitting in an intersection, you've got a red light in front of you, look up and down the road, you go, there's no cars coming, I just want to go, but I can't because it's a red light. That's wasting time, adds to congestion. The idea of the white colour there, I'm assuming that autonomous vehicles are sitting there at the traffic lights, it's white. Well, I know there's no cars around because I'm talking to other autonomous vehicles, so I'm happy to go. Cars behind me, follow me. But you'd need enough autonomous vehicles on the road. You'd need a critical mass of autonomous vehicles. And the other issue I have is there are approximately 10 million traffic lights I found with a very rough bit of research across the world. It's not a hard and fast number, but approximately
need an extra light.
That's right. Imagine the cost of 10 million traffic lights around the world having an extra light. why don't they just put that money into the development of the AVs to make them a bit smarter, a bit better? And then if you get enough AVs in the world, just get rid of the traffic lights altogether, because they'll just come along and know what's around them, and away
There
they
you
go.
Yeah, wacko. Yeah, so I wonder if people are going to start looking into recycling traffic lights. There could be a new industry right there.
Yeah, so I think we're a long way away from AVs. We're a long way away from a fourth colour on traffic lights. I saw it as
It's still
more...
going to happen, though, I reckon.
It will happen, but I saw this sort of concept as a bit of a hypothetical research by a university to say, I wonder what we could do to make AVs better, and this was the idea, but I just don't see it happening.
Our treasured Aussie favourite Vegemite has had our overseas cousins vexed for time immemorial. It looks for all money like rich dark chocolate paste, and you can eat it, but it just ain't chocolate, folks. And the look of betrayal on the face of any unsuspecting American is entertainment for fellow Aussies who are, of course, all in on the joke. That and drop bears. Well, it seems that very soon our beloved Vegemite may be more useful than a thinly spread dose of vitamins B1, B2 and B3 on your toast for brekkie. There's more to it. It's all in the name of sustainability, Matt.
You said the magic word there, did you? Thinly spread.
Yeah, you
For anyone
can't
out
get
there-
a spoonful. No one takes a spoonful of Vegemite.
You put it
and
on like
shoves it in their
jam,
gob,
then you...
unless they're pranking in America.
That's right. But I have seen people do that. They go, oh, it's just like another topping. I'll put it on just like I put it on
Looks
jam or
like
honey.
chocolate.
I'll whack it on there. Yeah, it's a bit scary. So Vegemite, yeast extract, as some people might refer to it as, is being used. Now, here's the scary part. I love it when we top the world, when Aussies are on top of the world for lots of things, but this one isn't such a good thing to be top of the world. We are one of the top producers of e-waste globally.
Wow.
We buy lots of stuff and we replace
Yeah.
lots of stuff, apparently.
Yeah.
Each individual, and I'm assuming this is individual adult, each individual in this nation in 2022 created 21.6 kilograms of e-waste. That seems like a lot. That's a computer or two computers. Phones don't weigh much.
Yeah.
So that's,
I'm thinking about 21.6 kilograms.
yeah.
That's a couple of bags of dog food.
I like your weight measurement
That's
comparison
about
there.
3 bags of dog food nearly.
So that's a lot. And again, we're one of the top producers of the world of that. So can we get better at it? The predictions are that we'll have, by the year 2030, about 657,000 tonnes of e-waste. And what are we doing with all this? Well, you talk about yeast extract. This is one of the ways they're looking at extracting some of the precious metals.
We're going to spread Vegemite all over.
Almost.
So bit for your toast, bit for your e-waste.
That's right,
folks.
more for your e-waste than for your toast. They've done some research and they put 20 litres of spent brewing yeast, so basically yeast extract, same as Vegemite, on various metals. They utilised adsorption, not absorption, adsorption, to extract metals like aluminium, copper and zinc. So if you want to get selective metal recovery, it's actually quite a cost-effective way to get selective metal recovery.
Wow.
So it sounds quite interesting. They use the brewer's yeast as a natural biosorbent. So the good part about it is it's a waste product itself. So you're not using other components that are hard to produce to then go and extract the e-waste. You might spend more money and more environmental damage to get the things to actually extract the e-waste. But with this one, it's a byproduct anyway. It's a waste product.
Potentially looking at a mass Vegemite shortage on the supermarket shelves. This is going to be like COVID with the toilet paper.
Will people spend more money?
People are going to start hoarding Vegemite.
They might spend more money on extracting e-waste than on Vegemite.
Yeah, right.
That's a possibility, definitely. So this could be one of the things, but we need to find out ways to extract e-waste or the various important parts of e-waste. That's absolutely without a doubt we need to do that. This is just another way they're looking at doing that. Getting waste to treat e-waste seems like a smart way to do it.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
There's a fair few steps to go, in particular getting it up to the stage where you are using this at an industrial scale. They're doing small tests at the moment. But the good part about it is as well, the yeast could be recycled and reused up to 5 times to extract metals from e-waste.
And you can spread it on thick.
And you can absolutely cover it in it. You can actually dip it in it if you like. So unlike Vegemite.
There you go.
So yeah, quite interesting. And again,
Revolutionary.
revolutionary, yeah. Again, different ways to extract things and people are looking
Getting
at
smart.
different solutions.
The age of sail is back again, ladies and gentlemen, but it may not be quite as romantic as when we left it. Container ships from the major transport firm MC Shipping are being fitted with WindWings. They don't look much like the classic sails from the schooners and frigates of yesteryear, but they're designed for sustainability and they're already saving tons of fuel per day. Sounds like some pleasing progress there, Matt.
We did do a story on this once before.
I remember at least one or two, maybe.
Yeah. And so now what we've got is they've been doing some testing. So 6-month process. They fitted some of these WindWing sails, 37.5 metres tall. Only 2 sails on the ships they've been testing.
You've got to
so
Google
far.
it, folks. Have a look at the pictures. They're amazing.
It's quite fascinating, isn't
Yeah.
it? So you're right. It doesn't look like the classic old schooner, and there's not someone there at the top of the mast and saying, ahoy there, there's pirates
These ones
coming.
are hard to reel in as well.
They are a bit, yeah, that's right. So they've done some testing. The vessel's been going around China, around Brazil, and so essentially over 6 months they've now got some data, which is fantastic. On average, the WindWing sails were saving about 3.3 tonnes of fuel per day, and I'll get to percentages in a moment because 3.3 tonnes, does it use 7,000 tonnes a day or does it use 5 tonnes a day?
I read one source saying saving 12 tonnes, but that seems like a phenomenal amount.
Well, it is, but that's what they found. On optimal wind condition days, up to 12 tonnes.
Yeah,
so on
wow.
average, 3.3 tonnes, but on days where the wind was absolutely spot on, a gale behind you, fantastic, up to 12 tonnes.
So I'm wondering how many tonnes one of these container ships has to of fuel.
That's right.
They have to take with them on a long journey.
And that's the relative thing. Whenever someone tells me a number, I say, well, that means nothing to me because I don't know how much fuel a ship uses.
But
so
still, if you're saving 3.3 tonnes,
it sounds like a lot.
God, that sounds like a lot.
So let's go percentages now.
Okay.
14% on average is
You're
what
right.
they say.
Okay.
So the 3.3 tonnes converts to 14%. The 12 tonnes is about 37%. So on the best days, it's saving about 37%. So that's pretty impressive. A third, basically.
Yeah,
a bit over a
amazing.
third. So that's pretty impressive. And
So 1 in every 7 trips, you get a free trip.
that's one way of looking at it, yes.
Yeah.
If you look at the 14, 7 14s or 100, close enough.
That's very cool.
So, yeah, so it's pretty good. Now, that's with 2 wings. 3 wings, they save an additional 1.5 times saving. So essentially, which makes sense. It's kind of adding an extra saving to it by having the 3rd wing there. Now, the problem is that you've got these ships that are typically pretty low to go under bridges or to go into ports.
Oh.
Now they're 37.5 metres tall
Ah.
above the deck.
Oh, dear.
Bit of a problem.
There's always a downside.
Now, I have seen ones where they lay them down, but it doesn't look like these ones lay down, but that's an option. You can lay them down so they're not an obstruction, but they've started working with 250 ports that they're commonly at to work out how they could bring these sails into ports without causing any damage. And I actually thought about when the ship comes up and docks, if the sails are still sitting there, now you'd obviously turn them so that they're not hitting the wind side on, they're hitting the wind as a thin a surface area as possible.
Yeah.
I just still thought, even with that, there's probably a bit of wind pressure and you probably don't want your ship docked and then getting pushed over in different directions by the wind. So that'd be one challenge. So maybe the best way is to lay them down, but that's all still part of the ongoing research. The big thing is there are around 110,000 merchant ships. If they're burning those sort of levels of fuel each day, then you start to add up to a lot of fuel burn each day.
Yeah.
If you could have a 1/3 saving across all of those, remember these are retrofitted, that sounds like a significant saving. So we might see new ships coming out with these, but also retrofitting might be one part of the step just to reducing fuel overall.
Maybe a good time to become a sea captain as well. A change of career. Cutting-edge innovation in sustainable energy solutions. Yeah, that's not a phrase I've pinned to the good people of Sardinia ever before when I think about it. Fairly safe to say that. But Sardinian think tanks have been hard at work and they're repurposing old petrochemical plants in a novel effort to employ liquid carbon dioxide to generate green power. Now, Matt, there are a couple of phrases here that are quite unexpected and new to me, and liquid carbon dioxide is another one of them. Because traditionally, carbon dioxide sublimes. It goes from solid to gas and back to solid again. But I did a bit of reading here, and it's very interesting what they're doing.
That's quite fascinating, isn't it? Now, the thing I like about this is that we are finding lots of different ways to store energy. Traditionally, we've just burnt stuff and we've got power and happy days. We don't have to worry about it too much. Now we've got a world where it's not quite so easy to produce the power, so how do we store that power? we talk about things like batteries. Well, that seems an obvious solution, but there's a fair bit of work in mining and then building those batteries, and they don't hold that power forever. They slowly lose some of the power they hold. We love the idea typically in terms of doing some sort of pumped hydro scheme. So you're pumping water uphill, sitting it there and then letting it fall when you need it. So that's fantastic. So there's lots of these different solutions out there in terms of what people are doing. This one here, though, is, again, taking advantage of the fact that you've got times when you've got more electricity than you need. What do we do with it? Well, it's just wasted typically, or you can use it to create something that then you can use later on. And so what they're doing with that extra electricity is to basically say we're going to compress carbon dioxide into a liquid state.
Yeah, so I learned something new as a chemistry teacher and physics teacher. Learned something new that at 31 degrees or temperatures below 31 degrees, you can compress it and get liquid carbon dioxide.
So it's interesting. And then obviously what you do is you expand it back into gas. And of course, as that expands, it increases the volume, and that can be used to spin a turbine. Like lots of things that they use to spin turbines, it's just gas flow. And so you spin a turbine, and then that's where you generate electricity when you need it. So again, it's this whole thing. What do we do? How do we store that? What's an effective way to store it? What's an effective way to store it long term? Gravity batteries is a good one where you can store it long term. And there's lots of other ways that people are doing things. So for example, in Finland, there's a startup that heats sand with excess electricity, and then that sand can provide heat to then basically turn water into gas and then spin turbines again. That's not great though, because it does cool down anyway. So you can't say, let's heat that sand up and we'll come back in 3 years' time and then, oh, hold on, it's not hot anymore. Yeah. So there's different solutions that you can use for different ways of doing it. Compressed air within salt caverns is another one.
Yeah, okay.
That offers storage for several days, so not great. So you've got all these different ways that we're doing it, but this one here is one that I haven't seen before, where you're doing the carbon dioxide turning to a liquid.
And I'm wondering to what degree it's a closed system and they can contain that carbon dioxide. I mean, we're assuming that they're not manufacturing carbon dioxide in order to get this to run, that they can trap it and take it. And I'm just wondering, if they can, if it's just a recycling thing about changing the pressure to be able to.
I assume it was a closed system, and it errs of me that I didn't actually go and research that part, but I just made the assumption that it would be a closed system. Carbon dioxide. Here we've got it, we've compressed it, we've used energy to compress that, it's now in a liquid state, and then, it uncompresses, expands, and now we've got it back in our gaseous state. Now, the thing that you're always trying to do with all of these systems is get as close to 100% efficiency as possible. Obviously, you're not going to get 100%, but you want them to be...
conservation of energy says you're probably going to lose some in some form.
Something somewhere, that's right, but it's the close you can get, and that's where I like the pumped hydro schemes. They're pretty high in terms of that, except if I pump water uphill and store it somewhere, then good old evaporation comes along and removes some of that water for me. So I don't get all of that, even though the pumping up and the falling down is pretty efficient. If I want to store it for a long period of time, that becomes a bit of a problem. So that's what you're always trying to get, is that 100% efficiency or near enough to. And this looks like it's fairly efficient in the way it does that. So storing power, that's the big thing. Tell your students that if you want to do that, it's material science and storing power.
Look, and I also think repurposing an old petrochemical plant, what a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if this is a possibility like on a smaller scale as well.
Well, you would think that it would actually work at any scale, really. If you have a huge demand for storage, then you just typically have larger ways to store, or larger volumes of something to store it in. Smaller ones, again, it comes down to the turbine and the storage, I suppose.
Yeah, so it's a case of hopefully you don't have to wait till your petrochemical plant is redundant before you get into this.
That's
and
right.
that we can start to do something a bit constructive, in the meantime.
I do wonder, it's an interesting point you make, I do wonder how long before we're going to get other storage systems in homes. You talk about the scalability, small, large. At the moment, if you want to put in some sort of storage in your home to take advantage of, say, solar panels on your rooftop, it's battery. That's what anyone talks about. They don't talk about other ways of storing that power. That seems to be the most efficient in that sort of environment. Maybe we'll come up with some other way of storing power.
Well, I wonder, like for a small community, like a couple of city blocks, for example, you might have a couple of shipping containers.
Yep.
And you're just recycling your carbon dioxide.
That's right.
to store power.
It sounds fascinating.
Well, we need clever people in this world, and well done, Sardinians, for your cleverness. Now, Now, this story is likely to get you scratching your head. We can 3D print with plastic now. That's hardly new. We can 3D print with concrete and metal. I'll say concrete. That's not a word? No, concrete and metal as well. That's old news. We even print with proteins, which is a bit more exciting. But did you know we can now 3D print, wait for it, wood, and recycle old wood in the process? Matt, they don't make it like they used to, is a phrase that has never been more pertinent than it is today. But this is in a really good way, am I right?
This is a really interesting one, isn't it? You're right. You've got materials that we're used to creating and forming into some sort of shape, but wood is one of those ones that grows on a tree.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we take it and there's a big chunk, a big cylinder, and we turn it into something else. But 3D printing with wood, you go, you're crazy. What have you been smoking this morning? But this is actually quite interesting. They're using the, if you like, waste product from wood. So when you go and cut wood up and you obviously get all the wood chips, and they take that, they break down the waste wood into lignin and cellulose. Then they take those components, they transform them into nanofibers and nanocrystals, recombine them with water, sounds like a fairly long process, to create a clay-like substance, and that's the 3D printing ink. So
this
that then
this
gets
is incredible.
It is, isn't it?
Someone thought to do that and go through all those steps. I wonder how this idea evolved. But anyway.
I love to find out some of those things, where it started from.
Yeah.
Someone saying, let's 3D print wood, and someone said, I think you need to come up with a better idea than that, because that's not going to happen.
Well, maybe someone said, we've got all this waste wood. We need to do something with it. How do we break it down? Then someone said, well, if you break it down like that, why don't we reconstitute it and build more wooden products from a 3D printer?
So then after they do all that, they print it. It undergoes a freeze drying process to get rid of the moisture. Then you heat it to 180 degrees Celsius. It does sound like a process. And that causes the lignin to soften and bond with the cellulose to strengthen the final product. Now, when you get the final product, when you get the final 3D printed product, then the wood is 6 times stronger than balsa wood. Now, that didn't get me that excited.
Balsa's a hardwood, though. We both know
it is
that.
a hardwood, yes, that's right. But it doesn't. It's not something that impressed me for its strength.
Renowned for being super strong.
So saying it's 6 times stronger than something that's very weak didn't get me that excited. I want to know how strong it is compared to ironbark or something that's a fairly strong wood. 3 times greater flexibility than balsa wood. So that's interesting, to be so much stronger and more flexible.
Yeah, balsa wood is used for particular purposes because of its properties. And so this new wood, printable wood, would have properties that are useful for whatever reason.
For something. Now, what they've done so far is they've 3D printed miniature items, so miniature furniture, miniature trinkets, that type of thing. So not that useful for a gift shop maybe, but not that useful.
Houses.
Doll's house, that's right. But the idea here is to see how they can expand the technology so they can start to print full-size furniture pieces, so a lovely timber deck chair or some lovely timber furniture, kitchen table maybe, and then get to the stage where they can go to houses. So we've talked about 3D printing in that new concrete product as opposed to the old concrete product. But we've talked about 3D printing houses from concrete. Imagine 3D printing a house from timber. Now, I did think when I saw that, I went, I'm not sure how you go about the freeze drying process and then the heating to 180 degrees Celsius for the house. That's a pretty big oven. You're going to put that in to heat it up again. But
this is the start. This is where we're at to start off
Exactly
with the
right.
technology, and we can expect this to evolve as well.
Yeah, that's right. So 3D printing.
Well, the thing that I love about wood is that it's an excellent way of storing carbon dioxide. And if you build stuff from it, assuming that you're not burning that stuff down, then you're just storing carbon dioxide in your building. And I love using timber, or the idea of building with timber, and it's not a new idea by any stretch. Because of that reason.
So it's a great thought. Do you think it still retains the carbon dioxide after you break it down into its base lignin and cellulose?
Well, cellulose and lignin are made from carbon dioxide.
So even though you've broken it down to those two products,
you've
still got
got carbon
dioxide.
and oxygen in there, and that's come from the carbon dioxide. So, it is absolutely 100% a way of taking carbon dioxide from the air and putting it into something that is going to just hold on to it.
We've 3D printed organs. We've 3D printed furniture out of timber. What Can't we 3D print? What is
that's
next?
right. If there is, I don't want to know about it.
And if you had have asked me a week ago what's next, I would not have said 3D printing out of timber. I would have thought some other metals, some other exotic materials. But timber, I just wouldn't have thought that would have been one of the things. But anyway, well done.
Now, how do you feel about AI coming in and making itself comfortable in your home? Predictions are that it's not only certain to happen, but if you were to guess when it's going to happen, then you might even like to cut a few years off that prediction too, I would expect. Some people are already there, of course. There's no need to get out the good crockery and boil the kettle for our new guests, Matt. AI is going to take care of things for us, as I suppose.
But we're sceptical. In some recent surveys, Aussies said that only 44% were open to AI transforming their homes within 5 years. So it's not like there's a lot of confidence out there in the market. 21% of Aussies said they believe they'll have AI devices capable of controlling their entire home at any time in the future. So there's not a lot of people out there that believe in it.
But it's only until people start doing it and other people start looking over at their neighbour's house and realising, oh, no, they're going all right with it. I think we'll get a little bit.
Yeah, maybe.
And a little bit becomes a little bit more.
Exactly right. And one of the examples that was given was just how fast photography has advanced in smartphones.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have thought about going to a wedding or a major event or a holiday without a camera, maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And now you wouldn't think about doing that with a camera because they'd say, what have you got a camera for, James? Where's your phone?
Yeah.
So that certainly advanced very quickly. And if you had have done a similar survey, say 15 years ago, do you think you won't take a camera with you to a major event and just use your phone? At that stage, your little basic flip phone or the Nokia that had a camera that was a grainy sort of little basic image that you could make out, maybe you'd laugh at that concept. But now it's changed. So
and now you go to a special event, like say a rock concert or a sports event, and just the phone's out all the time.
Yeah, that's right. That's just part of it, par for the course. So what are we doing with homes and how are we going to change what are the homes going to look like? Well, Samsung's been doing some work. They've got an Australians at Home report they did for what the home will look like in 2029. Surprisingly enough, there were a lot of Samsung products in the report in terms of what will be in the home. But there are 5 key areas that they think that AI will start to revolutionise the home. Transparent TVs is one of them. We've talked about those before. And we scratched our head and went, how can we use that? But I'll get to that in a moment. Energy management, okay, that makes sense. How can I use AI with my battery or my compressed carbon dioxide or whatever it might be in my home to store electricity? Soft robotics, that's really the robotics that are doing our laundry for us, making our breakfast, cooking our scrambled eggs for us. Vehicles is another one that's part of our home. So energy transfer, not just charging your vehicle, but maybe storing energy and being part of that, or maybe enhancing the living space, maybe doing something where you can actually use that as part of your overall living space.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
then of course, ambient AI, just in the background, just there, ready to help. When you need some help, you can just ask your house. And we've seen movies along those lines where you do just have the conversation with your house. And so they're the 5 areas that they're talking about. Now, transparent TV, I want to focus a little bit on that because we did talk about it when the first transparent TV was shown. And we said,
And we shrugged our shoulders, couldn't work out why you would.
And we said, for the sake of it, for the sake of I
So
can
you could
do it.
say that you've got it.
That's probably about as far as we went at that time. But they're talking very much about transparent TVs being in the home environment where you don't even know there's a TV. So it's just there. It might be showing a lovely picture. It might be showing some fish that aren't really there that look like they're swimming around in a lovely big fish pool that you have there. And so then you want to watch the footy and you turn it on and there's the footy on the screen. So maybe something like that. Even in businesses, I can see them being used a bit, but this is really focused on the home. And so all sorts of things, just being able to ask to change the channel, being able to ask some of your products, which you can do now, change the channel, turn the lights on and off, but getting AI in there to help you with that, not just change the channel, but to say, what time is the footy on this afternoon and who's playing, and getting AI to go and look up some of that. Good. Remind me 5 minutes before 4 o'clock this afternoon that the footy's on so I can come in to the lounge room and watch the TV that you've turned on for me that used to be a transparent thing.
Amazing.
And now it's on the wall. So getting to the stage where you're really involving your house in what you're doing with AI and the various tools that you've got around there. Soft robotics, I can hardly wait for that. I just want someone to fold the clothes up for me. I hate having to go through and fold the clothes up. But the other one is that less than 19% of Aussies foresee AI robots simplifying household chores. Again, that's ever. And I guarantee we will have some type of robot in the home within the next decade, I would say, that is able to do something for us, to help us in some way, whether it be just make a coffee or something that's very mechanical, or pick up clothes on the floor and iron them, or put them through the washing. There'll be something there. Anyway, it's an interesting process. I think it'll happen, and then before we know it, we blink and go, how do we ever do without whatever we've got in the home?
That's right. I wonder, projecting ourselves just 20 years, well, maybe even 10 years into the future from now, how we're going to look back on 2024 and think, oh, how do they even get by?
Yeah, exactly.
Grok is Elon Musk's gift to AI, and it's been released to the public in an effort to keep the development of AI transparent. Matt, recently a large sector of the population have been getting nervous each time Elon Musk raises his head, which is pretty often. How are we feeling about XAI's gift of Grok?
You do wonder what the plan is, if he has a plan, if there's some greater vision there, if he's stroking his cat while sitting back there in his armchair spinning in circles. Now, the interesting part here is that you remember the Apple computer versus IBM compatible PC wars, if you like. And one of the things that I took out of that process at the time was that Apple said, we're the only ones that can make a computer to our standard, and if we want to run the Apple operating system on a computer, it has to be our computer. That's it. We're locking it down. No one else can touch that. IBM compatible, Microsoft DOS, for example, they said, anyone can build to this standard, and lots of companies around the world did. It was no surprise to me that you got to the point where you look at market share after several years of that process. Apple, maybe 7 or 8%. IBM compatible PC, maybe high 80s, maybe even 90% market share. You had a couple other ones there, Linux, for example. But generally, that was how the world was. And to my mind, the mistake, if you want to call it that Apple made was just to say, we're the only ones that can make the hardware. If you made it a bit more accessible, that might mean that you were a bit more dominant, and that's where the IBM compatible. This is something similar, maybe. You've got OpenAI, which isn't open source. So OpenAI, ChatGPT, they keep that code to themselves. The company that owns it, OpenAI, keeps that code to themselves. You can use the tool, but you can't get in and look at the source code. It's not open source. So Elon Musk's AI chatbot Grok is open source. So you've got free access to the source code that makes up Grok. You can view it, modify it, you can distribute it. So that's
the good guys and the bad guys.
That's the good guys and the bad guys. That's everyone. But this is Elon's way of basically saying, up yours, OpenAI. He's got a lawsuit out against OpenAI at the moment, and he's trying to say that the CEO and OpenAI breached the foundational agreement of OpenAI because you're not using it for beautiful means to save the planet. You're using it for profit. You're actually charging people money to use it. So I don't know what's going to happen with this. Grok doesn't seem like it's a great tool at this stage, but if it's open source, it might be like the IBM compatible PC versus Apple. It might have lots of people around the world contributing to it, make it better overall, and before we know it, Grok. We're not talking about ChatGPT anymore. We're talking about Grok. It's also, Grok's got a bit of sass, a bit of attitude in the way it answers your questions. Is that enough to get people excited and locking onto it? Maybe. But I think the open source, that's the part that gets people really excited about it so that anyone can access that code.
But this puppy dog's going to need a very big leash, surely.
It's going to need a tight leash, I think, at some stage. And I suppose that's the point from Elon. You make it open source, so you make it more transparent and you can see what's happening. Making ChatGPT not open source means that they can be doing things behind the scenes. So, for example, if someone asks a question that might involve a particular company, then we always want to make sure that you're leading with this company, or you've got this version of events that suits this particular company.
Yeah.
Do we know about any of those deals going on behind the scenes? We have no idea.
Yeah.
At least with Grok, if all the source is open, or if all the code is open source, then at least we've got some idea of what's there. Now, having said that, there's about 314 billion parameters in Grok, so it's pretty hard to go and say, oh, are they sponsored by company X? But in general, you've got that concept of open source, which I think seems like let people make the world a better place.
2034 is going to be a very interesting time. Is there anything cooler than watching robots do tricks? And I've said it already this episode. If there is, then I don't want to know about it. Matt, tell us about the Parkour robot dog.
It's called Anymal.
Parkour, I think I should have said.
Parkour, yeah. Anymal. A-N-Y, or in uppercase, M-A-L. Anymal is what this is called. And I think it's just really showing off how far we've come with robotics. Parkour is pretty cool. You see people jumping around off various things, bouncing off different shapes, jumping off great heights, which would be of great injury to people like myself. But it looks like fun, and it looks like you've got to be pretty flexible, have a fair bit of dexterity, a fair bit of short burst muscle power, fast twitch fibers maybe. And so someone said, let's have a look at this and see if we can make
Let's
a
do it
dog.
with a robot dog.
Yeah, why not? And again,
So I'm just thinking my worst nightmare, one of my recurring nightmares is being chased through wherever, city streets or whatnot. And now they've just upped that. I've got a robot dog chasing me now.
and you're running through an obstacle course that looks like a parkour course.
Yeah, and I think I can get away from this thing, but it just keeps doing it. Yeah, no, this is going to be terrible.
And it's got so many advantages. It's 45 kilos, so it's just a touch lighter than yourself. It's a quadruped, and that's usually good to get through things faster.
It's cold. It's got no heart.
It's no heart at all. But it's showing that it can actually have the same agility as parkour athletes.
Yeah, wow.
Now, it's a bit like Spot the dog from Boston Robotics. They do various things with Spot just to show off, look what we can do now, because they want to sell these. And I assume that's the same with this, that they're basically showing off, look what we can do with Anymal. 4 legs, fine, 4 carbon legs, mind you. 12 motors. That seems like a lot. That seems like 3 motors per leg. And I started to think about how you might use those, and that seems fairly complicated. Maybe they've got ones that do fast action and slower action for longer strides. But anyway,
you've got knee joints and ankle joints as well to think of as well.
Yeah, so you've got a whole range of things there. But it just seems like we're getting to the stage where, look at this. They're basically showing off, I suppose, if you like, what we can do with robotics. Now, so the people who think that you're not going to be able to have a robot that can fold up your clothes in your bedroom, then have a look at Anymal, a parkour robot, and I reckon it would almost be able to get through a teenager's bedroom, showing off these skills with a number of things that are through a teenager's bedroom. And maybe that's where they're going. Maybe this is the first iteration.
To the back wall even.
That's right. Way down there where you don't want to go in a teenager's bedroom. So it is fascinating, but it's worthwhile having a look at the video. And again, I mentioned Spot. I think Boston Dynamics, have got Atlas as well. Those two there they've shown off. But have a look at some of these. And I'm quite amazed about how flexible and how incredible they are.
Christmas 2024 coming up. Ask a 5-year-old to draw a rocket ship and they'll draw a picture of SpaceX's Starship to scale. While the Starship designers have produced something that looks like it probably came from a low-budget sci-fi show from the 60s, test flights have been going very well. Up until now. Matt, NASA is keen on this rocket returning man to the moon. I guess lessons have been learned here. What are the details of this latest mishap and what's likely to come out of it?
Well, it's better than their first two. Their first two involved explosions. This one, they just lost. So that's okay, isn't it? You think there'd be a fair bit of work going on to track it, but they sent it up and it was meant to have a lovely splashdown, but they kind of lost it. SpaceX confirmed the loss of the spacecraft and said, sorry, we've lost the ship. No splashdown today.
It's sitting with the MH370 and Elvis and Hitler and...
Maybe all of the above, but
right.
I'm thinking it's gone up. Surely they're tracking it. It didn't stay up, so it's come down somewhere. Maybe not where they expected in the ocean, but Did you notice anywhere that it came?
Who went to sleep on this?
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, what's interesting about this is that in the past there would have been a huge amount of computer modelling done before you got to the stage of building a prototype and then getting to the stage where you finally launched something. It might have been years, might have been decades. I mean, it took a fair while to put man on the moon, a lot of testing before they finally started launching. SpaceX is taking a slightly different approach. They're saying, let's build it, let's get it about right, let's do it. Okay, that didn't work, it blew up. Where did it blow up? What caused that? Okay, let's do it again. Okay, well, that one blew up. So let's do another one. Okay, it got up there and we lost it. Okay, let's get it better. So they're just using models to fine-tune where they're at. It seems like an expensive way to go, but it's a faster way to go. And I think that's the point that they're making.
It's a big rocket, though.
It's a big rocket. It does seem expensive.
It's the biggest rocket we, like humans, have made.
So it seems an expensive way to keep testing, doesn't it? Maybe that computer modelling didn't sound like such a bad idea, but that seems to be the way they're doing it.
But the whole idea is that they want to be able to land this thing. They've been using is it the Falcon or the Dragon that has been able to land? And the idea is that this is going to land as well, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this is to get man on the moon.
Like a 1950s movie.
This is the Artemis 3 mission.
Yeah.
They want to have astronauts on the moon by September 2026. In the whole scheme of things, that's not that far away. Less or a bit over 2 years away before that should be happening. If I was one of those potential astronauts looking at these ones going up, blowing up, getting lost.
I'll go after the other guys go first.
That's right. Or maybe I just change occupation here.
But, so the Saturn V rocket that was the bones of the Apollo mission, that was a really big rocket. But the thing that landed on the moon was just a tiny little capsule.
Yeah.
Or a little fraction of that, we should say. But they're going to land the whole thing on the moon, aren't they?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what they're landing on there, but I suppose the point that I liked about this is this is just a different way of doing it. It's this iterative approach. Let's build it, test it, no. Build it, test it, no. Oh, yeah, we got that one right. Let's keep working on that. So it is a completely different way to go, but
it's the sort of stuff we used to do in the backyard.
Yeah.
With trying to build a catapult or whatever. There's so many little projects that people get up to in their backyards. Let's just build and test it.
That's right.
But this is a big project to do in your backyard.
It's more expensive than that little catapult. Even if you broke someone's window, it's still more expensive than that. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the tests, because I'd encourage people to watch them, because you don't know what's going to happen. It's all a bit of a mystery there. But anyway, it's happening, and I look forward to September 2026. I don't think they'll make the deadline. You ready? This is my big prediction. I don't think they'll make the September 2026 deadline for man on the moon again on a SpaceX rocket.
Well, I, for one, hope they do. I'm just super excited by it.
Well, I agree with you, but I'm not really convinced.
Not confident.
No.
And that's all there is today, folks. There's no more than a scattering of crumbs at the bottom of the bag, so it's time to move on. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
I can smell that toast cooking now and my Vegemite getting on there before we get that shortage.
Well, I've been inspired by the Parkour robot dog. I'm off to fish out my old Meccano set from the depths of the garage and see if I can catch up with the folks at Zurich who have been working on that. I'm also getting that Do Not Disturb Genius at Work sign again. That'll get out and be put on the outside of the shed. Thanks for tuning in again, folks. It's a pleasure to deliver a freshly hand-wrapped episode of Tech Talk for you each week. Matthew samples only the very best of the best news from the fast-paced world of science and technology, and then distills it to bring you the purified and concentrated stories that you hear from week to week. I'm James Eddy, and I look forward to catching you again in 1 week's time with more news from your future. Take care. Until then, bye for now.